John's had a rough couple of years. He's finally settled down with his family in his new ranch, but he works every day non-stop and he's getting really tired. He finally decided it's time for a much-deserved break. Today, John is going to every town in Red Dead Redemption 2 on a vacation. John decided what better place to start his vacation than Valentine. As he first rode into town, he remembered all of the past events that once took place here. That life was past him now, so he was excited to take a nice vacation here. It was already getting late when he arrived, so the first thing he decided to do was check into a hotel. Once checked in, he decided to check out his room before he tried anything else in town. The room was nothing special, but it had a bed and that's all John needed to get through the night. Valentine was known for having one of the best saloons in the country, so first things first, he wanted to check that out. As soon as he walked through the doors of the saloon, he could feel the good vibes. Clearly, this was the most popular place in town. He decided to start off the night with one beer, and honestly, it was a pretty good deal. As he was taking his very first sip, he noticed everyone was starting to run out of the saloon. Since he was no longer about that life, he decided to exit calmly and not get into any conflicts. It was great that Valentine happened to have another saloon, a lesser known option. John wanted an excuse to get out of the rain, so this was a perfect spot. When he walked in, he noticed the more calm, cozy feel to this saloon. He figured this was a good spot to get some dinner. The only thing on the menu though was oatmeal, so he ended up going with that. It was pretty good and he was ready for the next thing. He decided to go for a shot of whiskey to switch things up for the last drink of the night. After this, it was getting late though and the rain showed no signs of stopping. He decided to call it a night and head back to the hotel. Back in the hotel room, it was time for bed. He had a good idea for tomorrow morning before he left Valentine. One last thing to do before he left. Before that activity though, he needed some breakfast as he woke up pretty hungry. This morning, he decided to check out the general store instead of the saloon because he wanted to see if they had any good local food. Ultimately, he ended up going for a simple bread roll that was made in the store for a nice and easy breakfast. Now it was time for the cool thing he had planned for today. As he was coming in yesterday on his horse, he noticed a temporary tent set up. One of those tents happened to have a movie playing inside of it, and he was gonna go check it out. He had made it just in time for the start of the moving picture. To John, these were still crazy to watch. He would never be used to this. After the movie, it was time to head to the next town. John decided he would splurge on a train ticket this time. On his train ride to the next town, John decided to do some reflecting on Valentine. He rated the hotel a solid 6.5 out of 10. He rated the things to do category a 7.5 out of 10. The overall niceness town rating was a 7 out of 10, leaving a total of 21 out of 30 for Valentine. The next town on John's list was Annisburg, and to be completely honest, he was not very excited. Annisburg is primarily a mining town with little to no tourism. The only thing John knew he could do right away was get a hotel room. This hotel room was a clear downgrade from Valentine. However, it still wasn't the worst thing in the world. John was fine with it. Not knowing what to do, John climbed to a vantage point in the town and looked at his surroundings below him. One perk about Annisburg is the fact it's right on the water. He noticed a dock down below. With nothing else to do, he decided he would go check it out and head down the stairs. His goal was to look for a boat that he could borrow and explore the water area. Unfortunately, he couldn't find any, so he decided he would try some fishing. However, John completely forgot to pack any bait, so he couldn't go fishing. He decided he might as well try and swim. As he got in the water, he didn't realize how tired he was, and just like that, he was in a near drowning situation. Thankfully, he stood up and he was fine. That was a close one. This was John's sign to head around town, see if he could get any food before getting an early bedtime in. John learned quick that there was basically nothing to do here. Nothing was open for him. There was one thing that he could do though that sounded pretty appealing right now. It was now raining and he was gonna get a bath. This was the perfect time to take one. After his bath, he realized he had enough of this town and headed to bed. The next morning, it was time for John to head to his next location. However, this time he was going to travel there on horseback. Once again, on his way to the new town, he reflected on Annisburg. For his stay in the hotel, he rated it a solid 4.5 out of 10. Not perfect, but not the worst. For the things to do in Annisburg, he gave that a 3 out of 10, due to his primary purpose being a mining town. And the overall niceness town rating, he gave it a 3 out of 10. This gives Annisburg an overall score of 10.5 out of 30. Just as John finished reflecting on Annisburg, he came up on his next town, and this one he feared would be even worse. Meet Van Horn, the almost abandoned trading post. This town certainly has seen better days, but John knows he wants to visit every town to make it worth his time. Like usual, the first thing he did when visiting a new town was check into the local hotel. The room was in a pretty cool location, but the inside conditions were by far the worst that John had seen so far. To be honest, the room looked pretty trash from the last person that stayed here, clearly. Thankfully though, this town had an open saloon unlike the last one. John decided to go check it out. He wasn't in the mood for any drinks, so he just decided to look around the saloon. This one looked very barren and empty compared to the ones in Valentine. Valentine. To be completely honest, after that, there's not that much to do in this town, but John had a really good idea. There is a lighthouse here in Van Horn, and John wanted to climb to the top. After a lot of stairs and one more ladder, he was now at the top. What he saw was a great view of the town. Even though this was a rundown place, it still had a special charm to it, and he enjoyed being up here. Without that much to do, John spent the rest of the day talking with the locals, just chilling around his hotel room, and had a quick dinner by the water. As the sun set, he got more and more excited for where he was heading tomorrow. Just before bed though, he decided to chill by the fire for a little bit to warm up, and then he went to sleep. Excited for the trip ahead, he left right away in the morning. Saying goodbye to Van Horn wasn't that hard, but it also was better than he thought. Today, he was heading down south for his next town. Once again on his journey, he had time to reflect on where he had just stayed. The hotel room there was definitely pretty weak. John gave it a 3 out of 10. For things to do, there was actually more than he thought. He gave it a 4 out of 10. The overall niceness town rating, obviously he's going to give that a 2 out of 10. This brings the total for Van Horn 9 out of 30. His journey to the next town was really cool, crossing lots of bridges and going over lots of wetlands. Civilization started to creep up as he could tell he was getting closer to the main city. He was now in Saint Denis. After entering the large city, it was still raining, so he decided he was going to find his hotel room again, like usual. This time, his hotel room was located in one of the nicest saloons in the city. After walking up a grand fancy staircase he was not used to, it was time to check out his room. He couldn't believe how nice it was. This was a million times better than what he had stayed in the previous 2 nights. He couldn't believe he could afford this place. There was going to be so much to do in the city, and he had a full day ahead of him. First things first though, he wanted to freshen up. Heading to the barber shop was his first goal, to shave off his beard. After the barber was done, he was ready to start his day. The first thing on his list that he really wanted to try was the trolley cars. This was new technology he was not used to. Next on his list was checking out the theater to see a live show. Walking in, he couldn't believe how nice this place was. John decided to splurge a little bit on his ticket and ordered a private viewing in the balcony. The show ended up being pretty cool. John clapped along like he belonged. He still felt like this wasn't his style though, so he decided to leave the show early. Right across the street was a spot where people played dice. Unfortunately, no one wanted to play with him though. Next on his list was a movie. He felt like this was more his style, and he was excited. He decided to go in blind to the movie, not knowing what the film would be. The film was called The Farmer's Daughter, and he honestly thought this one was pretty funny. On his way out from the movie, the worst turn of events happened. John accidentally ran into a lady on his way out. He couldn't even see her, and by that point, it was too late. He was now wanted for disturbing the peace. As fast as he could, he ran away and decided to lay low until things cooled down. Since it was completely accidental, but he didn't have time to explain himself, John just decided to pay off his bounty and call it a day. He was pretty hungry after all that running and wanted a quick snack that he could use for lunch. He decided to head to the general store. He decided to go for a block of cheese, a nice easy meal. After that, he wanted to check out the city's saloon scene. He found one more his style, less fancy, nothing crazy, just what he liked. It was still a little bit too early, he felt. He didn't want to have any drinks yet, so he just looked around. Definitely not the busiest place, but it was cool. After a good day so far, he decided to head back to his saloon. This time, he opted for a real meal, and for dinner, he ordered some prime rib. Of course, he couldn't go today in this nice saloon without having a shot of whiskey. The rest of the day, he enjoyed his time at the saloon, but now it was bedtime. Before bed though, he wanted to check out the balcony that came with his hotel room. As he walked out onto the balcony, he couldn't help but realize how nice the city was. He used to hate the city, but now that he actually was vacationing in it, he enjoyed it. He had one more thing planned for tomorrow morning before he left the city, but overall this was a great day. The next morning right away, John went to his next activity, which was getting a custom portrait photo taken of himself. He tried a ton of different poses, backgrounds, everything. Finally, he settled on one he liked and took the photo. Now he was done with the photo, he was ready to leave Saint Denis. He was not quite used to cities yet, but his time here was well spent. The next town on his journey was easily accessible by horse. So once again, his journey gave him time to reflect. How did he like Saint Denis? His hotel was truly the pinnacle of luxury. He gave it 9.5 out of 10. There was an endless amount of things to do in the city, easily a 10 out of 10. He didn't even get to everything. The overall niceness town rating was an 8 out of 10. The city has its nice parts, and obviously the lesser nice parts, but overall, a solid city. That brings the total for Saint Denis 27.5 out of 30. As the scenery started to change around him, he knew he was coming up on his location. This upcoming town was small, but it had a lot of life. Welcome to the town of Rhodes. John had now made it to his next location, and it couldn't be any different in size compared to the last city he was at. Like usual, he decided to get his hotel situation under control first. Rhodes has one of the nicest saloons in all of the country, and it always has been one of John's favorites. He was more than happy to be back and would definitely be utilizing the bar later. First though, he found his room, and it honestly wasn't anything special, but it did the job. It definitely had a much smaller bed, but that was no problem for John since he was alone. After checking out his room, he realized he was really hungry. He had no breakfast this morning, so he decided to head to the general store. John decided on some corned beef and a peach. After eating his food, he was ready to explore the town a little bit. He'd heard good things about this gun store, so he decided to check it out for himself. He didn't end up buying anything new though. He told himself himself he didn't need any more guns. He'd always wanted to check out this wood mill, so he asked a couple guys if he could take a look, and they said yes. It was cool to see how everything worked up close, and he liked seeing the engine that powered it all. There's honestly never been a whole ton to do here, so John just spent a couple hours talking to some people here, asking them if they liked living here. He was still pretty hungry, so he decided to head back to the saloon for some food. He ordered cracked wheat and milk, and despite what it looked like, it actually tasted not too bad. He decided to have a beer too, cause why not? With not much left to do until night, also being tired from the trip, he decided to take a nap. John decided he was finally going to go all in at the bar tonight. He decided to wait though after his nap up on the roof. Once it got dark, John headed to the bar and had a ton of whiskey shots. He had the bartender keep them coming. Eventually he started to get a little bit tipsy and he decided to only have one more. At this point he was definitely gone. He was able to keep it together though and made it upstairs. He ended up making a guy a little bit mad. Thankfully he diffused the situation. After that he figured he had his fun and it was time for bed. Rhodes didn't have too much to offer, but he had a good day. He awoke ready to continue his journey. The saloon was surprisingly busy this morning. John noticed the guy in front of him was a little bit drunk. Instead of taking a horse today, he'd be taking the train. After purchasing his train ticket, John was ready for the next location. A decent distance by train meant he had time to reflect and think of his time in Rhodes. The hotel room in Rhodes was very average. John gave it a 5 out of 10. There honestly wasn't that much to do in Rhodes. The saloon really kicked up his score though, so we gave him a 4.5 out of 10. The overall niceness town rating was a solid 7 out of 10. Rhodes has always been a very nice and clean town. The total score for Rhodes is 16.5 out of 30. Just in time, John's train stopped at Riggs Station where he needed to be. This was his stop, but it was not the end of his journey to the next town. The next leg of this journey involved a quick horse ride. All of a sudden, John was now in the next town, Strawberry. Strawberry was a beautiful little town. Just like the last, it wasn't big, but it had a lot of character. As you know by now, John headed to the hotel where he would be staying. His room was located in the Welcome Center. When John walked into the room, he was amazed at how large and nice it was. John then realized that his room came with the best balcony view in the whole town. Right across the street from the hotel was the general store. John decided to go get some food. He felt like buying a carrot today and some canned peaches. Strawberry was a great scenic town for walking around, so it was time to do that. John met a fisherman and asked him if he had caught anything. Apparently Strawberry was famous for this guy playing 5-finger fillet, so John decided to challenge him. He decided to get a couple practice rounds in before actually challenging him. Eventually, he got the hang of it and started going super fast. It was now time to put some actual money on the line. John's opponent was pretty good, but he knew he could beat him. It was now John's turn to go, and oops, he accidentally hit himself, but don't worry, he decided to lock in, and look at how fast he went. John ended up taking the victory in a solid performance. After the 5-finger fillet, he decided to chill it out a bit. Good thing there was an outhouse here, because he had to go to the bathroom. Like usual, John liked to talk to the residents of the communities he was visiting. He even decided to listen to the local reverend and his sermon. Probably the coolest part about Strawberry though is the various bridges over this river. John's curiosity peaked when he noticed this ladder. He wanted to climb it to find out what it went to. What he found at the top was this empty water aqueduct. It looked like it took the water from up there and into the river. Being dumb, John decided to have some fun and he followed this thing to the end. Continuing to make poor choices, John thought it would be fun to jump off of here into the river. He severely miscalculated his jump and hit a rock, almost drowning in the river. Thankfully, he was able to grab onto a nearby rock and safely gather himself out of the river. John decided that was his cue to play it easy the rest of the day. He headed back to the Welcome Center. He decided to partake in one last adventure of the day though. He headed over to the jail right next door. After speaking with the sheriff, he gave him permission to go down and check out the jail cells. John said hi to the 2 prisoners in the jail cell and thanked himself and his brain for never ending up in this situation. For real this time, John went back to his hotel and decided to spend the rest of his day on the balcony watching the town go by beneath. Since there was no saloon in this town, he decided to call it a day and head to bed. The next morning, John said goodbye to the Welcome Center and Strawberry as he started his trek to the next town. Looking back on Strawberry, John really liked this town. He rated the hotel 8.5 out of 10 due to its great view and great room. There was no saloon, less things to do in this town, so he gave things to do 5 out of 10. The overall town niceness rating was an 8 out of 10, leaving a total of 21.5 out of 30. His horse ride to the next town was very cool. He ended up riding through a river. Just like that, he was now back into dry fields, coming up on the very next town. This one though was very familiar to him. He had recently purchased and rebuilt a ranch right next to Blackwater, so this was his hometown. Blackwater was another up-and-coming big city, and it had a lot of promise to it. Obviously, John was on vacation now though, so instead of staying in his ranch, he wanted to check out the hotel in the saloon. He was very impressed with the hotel room. It looked very fancy and nice. The first thing John did was head downstairs and have some peach cobbler. After his food, it was time to hit the town. Blackwater had its very own movie theater, so John wanted to see what was playing. He was disappointed though when he realized it was the same movie he had just watched when he was in Saint Denis. He didn't stay to watch the whole thing, but he made sure to say hi to the dog on the way out. He ended up asking a local what his favorite part of the town was, and he recommended he checked out the pier. He realized he had never actually walked out here, so he was excited to try it out. He realized there was a great view of Blackwater from this pier. Looking at Blackwater from the perspective of a tourist made him realize he was happy he moved here. He was for sure going to take his wife here. He went to the ticket office to see if there was any tickets available for the ferry boat, but everything was closed. He asked some other locals what their favorite things to do. They actually recommended him to go onto the tops of the roofs. That idea really sparked an interest in John, and he found a ladder that he was going to climb up to the top. He knew he probably was not supposed to be doing this, but he didn't see any cops around, so he called it good. He was not satisfied with this roof though, and wanted to go to the very tallest one. He was super glad he did this because at the top he got the best view possible of the town. He was discovering so many new things about this town that he never even once thought about doing. After not getting to play any dominoes in Saint Denis, he knew of a good spot here in Blackwater to play some. These guys were just outside of the town and were always playing. After a couple of rounds, John left the table. After that, he had a couple drinks at the saloon while waiting for night. Later that night in the saloon, John decided he wanted to play some blackjack. He didn't do so well though and lost his first round and his second, so he just left the table. After that, he called it good for the day and headed to bed in his nice hotel room. The next morning, John left his hotel. The general store was right across the street, so he decided to get some breakfast. He quickly noticed there was no shopkeeper, meaning he could take whatever he wanted for free. I know John tried to live a crime-free life now, but there were some things he couldn't help still. And to be completely honest, he went a little bit crazy. For the last leg of his trip, John decided to splurge on a stagecoach ride. Reflecting on Blackwater, John rated the hotel 7.5 out of 10. For things to do, he also rated it 7.5 out of 10. For the overall niceness town rating, he gave Blackwater 8.5 out of 10. It would have gotten higher, but there was a lot of construction going on. That brings the total to be 23.5 out of 30. The stagecoach had brought John to his first stop of the journey onto his last town. His stop did not start good as he noticed a bunch of bandits ride on their horses into town shooting their guns up. He knew he wasn't going to stay here long. Not to mention the second thing he saw was a dead lady on the ground rotting. See, Armadillo had a cholera outbreak, which is why he would not be staying here and it was merely just a stop. The man behind him at the bar immediately warned him to leave and also told him he had the disease. John took this as a cue to leave and keep going on his journey to the next town. The last leg of his journey once again involved horseback riding. John was very happy to get out of that disease-ridden town. His ride was super cool as he made his way through various canyons. And just like that, John was at his next town, Tumbleweed. Upon arriving in Tumbleweed, John first noticed a sheriff carrying a prisoner. Out of curiosity, he wanted to check out the situation. Sure seemed they didn't like the guy. Unlike the rest of the towns, John had no clue where to get his hotel, so he decided to hit the saloon first. He decided to order some chili to eat for his next meal. After asking around town, he ended up finding out the hotel was with the gun shop owner. His room was on the second floor of this building. After expecting way worse, he realized the room was not that bad at all. Heading back into town, he didn't really know what to do, so he headed to the butcher. He ended up buying some salted beef to eat. After finding nothing else in town, he decided to check out this mansion. Unfortunately, the door was locked. After that, he went to go talk with who he presumed was the owner. She was pretty nice to talk to. After heading back into town, John finally realized why this town was called Tumbleweed. There was about nothing to do here. John knew the one thing he could do was go have some drinks at the saloon. This was about as good as it gets in Tumbleweed. After his drinks, he went exploring around the saloon a little bit. He ended up stumbling on a poker room. He didn't feel like playing though. After that, he decided to call it a day and headed back to his hotel room, where he fell asleep for the night. John did not linger at all and was out of town right away in the morning. As John reflected on Tumbleweed, he realized the hotel was not that bad. He gave it a 5 out of 10. For things to do, this was honestly the worst one so far. It did have a saloon, but this was a solid 2.5 out of 10. The overall niceness town rating was 4 out of 10. To be honest, this was a pretty clean town. Not that many abandoned buildings. Obviously a couple, but it was not bad. That brings the total for Tumbleweed at 11.5 out of 30. John's ride home was not short at all. On the way back, he thought about his least favorite town and favorite town. His overall favorite was clearly Saint Denis, where his least favorite was Van Horn. After a long ride, John was now back at his ranch. He was super excited to find his family and tell them all about his trip. Inside, he found Abigail first, then Jack and Uncle outside. He had a great trip, but he was happy to be home with his family. Next time, he for sure wanted to bring Jack.